All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here and we can start that show. Got our wheels spinning. Hopefully, everything's going well. Unfortunate to see the Chiefs win, but what can you do? All right, well, welcome in, everybody. It's Monday morning. Happy Martin Luther King Day, of course. Shout out to MLK and everybody out there, and hope you're having a good day. I'm Nick Kendell, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am running solo today. Scott is out there in the Nordic countries, so he should be back Wednesday, I do believe. But today, just going to be me and you guys in the chat. So we'll be here 45 minutes, 45 minutes, and hanging out. I wanted to kind of talk about Broncos who potentially, could be out or in for some competition this offseason. Obviously, you guys lead the chat with your comments and super chat and lead the direction of the show. But that's kind of what I was thinking today, just as far as general discussion. Obviously, draft season is here for Broncos country. We can recap some of the games this weekend as well, some big takeaways or anything like that. But yeah, it's Broncos. We're Broncos all the time, obviously, as the background gear here indicates. Maybe some Hawkeyes as well thrown in there. But appreciate everyone coming in. Let's say hello to everybody in the chat. We got our guy David Youngkin coming in here saying, if anyone with common sense knows that the Bills can't beat the refs, I mean the Chiefs, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard for Buffalo. That this will be the fourth time, I believe, the Bills will be playing the Chiefs in the playoffs, and the Chiefs so far are 3-0. Right, it just kind of feels inevitable at this point. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I thought the Ravens had the better chance to beat Kansas City, but Buffalo played an incredible football game, and they played mistake-free football. I mean, when you win the turnover battle 3-0 +3, you're going to win that football game, I don't know, 95 to 98% of the time. You just cannot make that many mistakes. And you guys know I like to throw around a lot of stats on the show, EPA per play, success rate, blah, blah, blah. I always cringe when analysts out there, they talk about, basic stats like, oh, he threw for the most yards as a rookie or something. It's like, well, every single team this week that lost won the yardage total. Yards, I mean, it's a useful stat still, but really one of the less indicative stats as far as success. As we see how they're going to be inflated and artificial. And as we saw this week, every single team that lost won the yardage battle, but every single team that won, 0 giveaways. So turnovers, baby. Turnovers matter a lot. Good to see you, David. Says it feels that Sean is trying to relive the Saints to the Broncos. I mean, that would be great to have a Hall of Fame quarterback and the success that the Saints had in the NFC South in Denver. I don't think it's possible to relive that because you have Mahomes in your division, and that changes the math a tad. But Sean's just doing what he knows to have worked for him. And there was questions coming into the season, does Sean still have it as a play caller? I thought the offensive design this season was pretty good. Now, there's still some questions as far as like the sequencing and whatnot, but I thought the overall insulation of the quarterback and the design of the offense overall was pretty good. So, yeah, and if he wants to continue to build like he built that Saints team, you'll expect them to keep investing in the trenches here, but we'll see. We got Jason coming in here. Happy Monday. Good to see you, Jason. Appreciate you. Said there's an entire nation rooting for Buffalo next Sunday. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully Kansas City can be taken out. We'll see what happens. I mean, gosh, I know everybody was cheering for Von Miller when he picked that up to go the whole way. He got chased down. A good play by, was it Justice Hill that chased him down to give up to not give up the touchdown. But Ravens came up short, and that was a heck of a game. And I feel significantly better after Denver, after seeing the Ravens yesterday just give up so many yards and just getting pulverized on the ground against Buffalo. I feel much better about how Denver's defense looked against them. It's just, I don't think there were any truly elite defenses in the NFL this season. I know Denver was first in EPA per play. They were fourth in DVOA. I don't think there was actually, though, a truly elite defense in football. The Ravens could make an argument. The Eagles could make an argument. The Texans had really good defense too, and Denver, but not elite. I think there were 2 elite offenses in the NFL this season, and they played Buffalo and Baltimore, and Buffalo came out on top. And that formula, I mean, it's crazy how they've switched so drastically over the last 2-3 seasons. They used to be a really heavy, Brian Daboll, when he was offensive coordinator, a lot of shotgun, a lot of 10 personnel, spread concepts. Now they're out there. I think Bills ran more 6 offensive line than anybody in the NFL this season. They used it a heck of a lot against Denver and beat the absolute crap out of Benito, Cooper, Barton, and Stranad in the run game. Linebackers had a horrific game, and they did the same thing against the Ravens. So be curious to see. It's a ebb and flow kind of league. That's one thing that makes football so great. It kind of, once the pendulum swings one way, it goes back to the other. I don't think it's like basketball where like the analytics have kind of figured out basketball and it's become pretty homogenous and boring, in my opinion, the NBA. But the NFL, now that we got these light boxes, nickel personnel, well, big bodies, 12, 21 personnel, running backs, power football is back in. So we'll see how that pendulum continues. It's who can be the one to tweak things and figure out solutions to problems. It's fascinating. Football's the best. Small sample size chaos sport. Jamal Killings, always great to see you. We also got more football tonight. Tonight, Marcus Freeman has a chance to win a national championship for Notre Dame on MLK Day in MLK's hometown. Wow. Get it done, Marcus. Beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to win by 16 plus, but that's why you play the football game, right? We got Chase coming in with the breakfast emojis. I have a protein bar most mornings for breakfast, especially if I'm taking care of the baby in the morning. So we're here. I'd love some eggs, though. Roy says, good morning, Nick. It was a good game last night. Go Bills, take down the Chiefs. Yeah, both games yesterday were pretty good. It's pretty crazy. I would love to build Denver like the Eagles. The Eagles just have continuously invested in premium positions with the first round, even if they've been stacked there. Offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, wide receiver. And they've made the most quarterback independent roster I can remember in a while. Like Jalen Hurts, big athlete, does some things well, but limited passer. But the offensive line, the run game, the weapons, the defensive line, the secondary. I mean, Eagles have done Howie Roseman's done a phenomenal job building that defense. And I think that's a model to replicate. I don't think just have Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Like that, I don't know if that's a replicable model. What the Eagles are doing, I do think is replicable. So that's something to food for thought. Ernie Mays. Hello, Nick. Go Broncos country only. Go Ernie. Good to see you. Pearl's in the house. Great to see you. Always fun to see you. Stay warm, please. I'm warm up here in Seattle. I think it was 26 this morning. So that'd be great to see. And going to be fun to see. And unfortunately, Ravens lost. Had to be one of those teams. A great divisional game. Unfortunately, the Chiefs won. And crazy. Jaden Daniels, man. What a game against Detroit. They were I guess Buffalo is an underdog too, but the only massive underdog in the playoffs so far that have won. And man, what a difference they were as an underdog. And speaking of underdog fantasy. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join over 5 million fans who are ready to play on Underdog. With their pick'em game, you can win money by just making entries with your favorite players. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. With a champs game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats, such as passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Do they have penalties? Over under on Patrick Mahomes flopping on the field. I'll set that at 2.5. Every dog deserves a second chance. And with the Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. Download the Underdog app today and use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, use the Underdog app today and use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado. For some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona. And present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, back. Now we got that done. Shout out to Underdog. Again, use our code MHuddle. Let's see who else is joining us in here today. Yeah, Detroit got dismantled. 5 turnovers to do that. Again, I mean, the only game where the team didn't win the turnover battle and lost this week was Houston, where there were 0 turnovers. Chiefs gave the ball away 0 times. Washington, +5, gave up the ball 0 times. I believe the Eagles game was a +2 for the Eagles to -2 for the Rams. 0 giveaways for the Eagles. And then 3-0 Ravens Bills. So turnovers, man. Turnovers matter so freaking much. I know I think it's been a kind of a popular talking point this week from Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick, former players discussing what they've said in the past. I think Troy Aikman mentioned as well, but it's not necessarily who makes the biggest plays in the playoffs. It's who makes the least mistakes. And teams that made the costly back-breaking mistakes obviously lost this week. In a small sample size chaos sport like football, that happens. Jason Bonnie comes in and says Denver needs a Jahmyr Gibbs. Ashton Genty, I've seen him mocked to Denver in a few mock drafts. Yeah, we're 95 days away from the NFL draft. So who knows? I think that Genty is dynamic enough. And again, we talked about earlier, the pendulum swinging. I think running back value will be, it's not going to be totally devalued, but if like Bijan Robinson could go 8 and Gibbs can go, was it 12 or 13 2 drafts ago? I'm imagining Genty is going to go in the top 12. So that would make it hard for Denver to get him, but you never know. He had a lot of carries. He's a little bit short. Played in a non-power 4 school. So we'll see what happens. Robin comes in and says, smart comment about the Eagles' route to success. I mean, a lot of it is luck and whatnot as well, but I mean, the Eagles have refused to use premium capital first-round picks on running back. They did pay one, but I mean, if there was a Barkley available, I'd be banging the table to pay one this offseason. There's not. There's Najee Harris, which I would not want to pay. They've not really invested heavy early capital on safety, linebacker, tight end. I mean, they pretty much just go over and over again. Wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, cornerbacks. It's working pretty well. Now, granted, they play in the NFC, not in the AFC, where there's just superstar quarterback after superstar quarterback. And we'll see how it goes against Vic Fangio with that defense and the Commanders this week. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Eagles draft philosophy, draft Georgia Bulldogs. They draft athletes on the defensive and offensive line as well, which tends to work out pretty well. Nathan comes in and says, how much do you think it would cost to trade up to 11, swap first round, a third and fourth round maybe? Well, that's almost the exact trade that Denver had in 2019, where they were at 10 overall, and they traded back to 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think the trade was Denver sent 10, and they got back 20, a third round pick, and a future second. I don't know if I'd be wanting to give up that much for a team that has had so few top 100 picks in the last 3 seasons. I think you really need to start to work on some of the developmental depth on this team. Yeah, I don't think you can continuously build with day 3 picks unless you're the Rams, who've been pretty crazy. But hey, Rams too. They're using their capital where? Defensive line. It's working out pretty well, getting them pretty far. We'll see what happens. It's possible. Roy says 13 below here in Sioux Falls. I was just out in Sioux Falls, Roy, when I drove back from Iowa to Seattle. So good times. It was not that cold then. No fun. Keith Brugman says, solo, Nick. What's up, buddy? We're hanging out. Scott's out there in the Nordic country, so hope he's having a great time. Appreciate him coming in. We got David coming in and say, what do you think about Cam Scatterbo? Running back from Arizona State, transferred from Sacramento State. He reminds me a lot of Kareem Hunt coming out, Kareem Hunt out of Toledo, really well-built back, good vision, good pace, not necessarily a home run hitter, like didn't have open field, like open the gate kind of speed. And we saw, that can be pretty important if you have a good offensive line. If you can get those guys into those creases and truly open up that gate, it's a special skill to have to turn those 20-yard runs into touchdowns. I don't think Cam has that per se, but I mean, he runs tenacious. He's a pretty good receiver out of the backfield, and he's a mentality guy that you'd love to have as well. So I think Cam, if he's there, I think 50 is probably too early for me unless he tests well for the Broncos. But if he's there, early third round, maybe you think about trading up for him. I think where Denver will be picking the second round, it might be a little early. I don't have the board stacked that high yet. But he's a fun back, no doubt. Again, my comp has been Kareem Hunt, maybe a little bit more balanced, contact balance. But that's a good back, all around back as well. So Todd in the house. Good to see you, Todd. Hello, Nick in Broncos country. Moneymore says, hey, hypothetically, we had the first pick in the draft. Which player would improve our team the most? If we had the first pick in the draft, which player would improve our team the most? Man, this is an interesting question, Moneymore, because I think if you're talking about a 1-season sample size, Ashton Genty probably improves the team the most because of the improvement you'd make at running back. Over like a 3-year window, it's probably a conversation between Travis Hunter and Teteroa McMillan. So Travis Hunter, offensive weapon / defensive back from Colorado, obviously Heisman winner, or Teteroa McMillan was a slot. I think I'm keeping an eye on Tet McMillan, guys. If he falls past 11, or even if he falls to 11, I could see Denver making a move up for him. He's a perfect fit for what the Broncos need. He unbelievable in the slot for Denver. You get your Michael Thomas guy there. He'd be a perfect fit, but we'll see. I think he'll probably end up going top 8. But God, if I had the first overall pick and I wasn't trading down, I'd probably be taking Abdul Carter because I think he's the most special player at the most impactful position in this draft. I think Travis Hunter is really, really special, but cornerbacks, especially because I think he's better in zone than man. He's a little bit slender. Cornerback, I think value can only take you so far, where if you have a truly elite game-changing pass rusher, it's the most valuable thing you can have on outside of quarterback. So I'd probably have to go Abdul Carter, even though you're good at edge, like in the immediacy. He would change your defense a lot. You'd add I think Benito's very good. Cooper's a very functional player. I think you only truly have one alpha, though, on your defensive line right now in Zach Allen. I think Benito's a very useful piece, closer, so to speak, fastball guy, but I don't think he's one of the top 10 best edge rushers in football. He has some limitations. Very good player. I really like Benito, but Carter's special. We got you go Hunters. Definitely Hunter's up there as well. But we'll see what happens. Oh, Todd, just Venmo me directly. If you can't use Super Chat, that's okay. Jason comes in and says, Mason Graham, the best defensive player in this draft. He's very good. I don't think he's as special as Hunter or Carter, personally. But, Travis Hunter is unbelievable as well. I mean, I don't know, guys. I'm always going to be tilted towards the defensive line and pass rushers in comparison to defensive backs. But we'll see what happens. So getting to it here, I love that you guys are talking draft stuff here. It's very fun. Yeah, we got Viper all saying TreVeyon Henderson would be amazing for the Broncos. TreVeyon Henderson would be amazing. I think he's a great pass blocker. He's a good pass option out of the backfield. I think he's even a good enough pass catcher that you can flex him out and do some route running stuff if you want to do that pre-snap and kind of go into a 10 personnel empty set. Big thing with Henderson is that he's had injuries that have really limited him. And that'll be big for the medical team. But without the injuries, I think he's definitely a top 50 pick. Injuries could push him down. He'll be off some teams' boards, I bet, but we'll see what happens. Another running back question here. What do you think of Dylan Samson out of Tennessee, pairing with Estime up in the backfield? Yeah, he's one who's the high school track numbers are unbelievable. I do wonder about his contact balance and change of direction because he does run a little bit upright. I wonder if he needs a little bit more of a runway, so to speak. But he's very interesting. I think he's a day 2 option for sure for Denver. Because Nico Iamalava, I believe I pronounced that correctly, their quarterback, was a little bit scattershot in his accuracy. We couldn't really see Dylan in the pass game out of the backfield so much. So his testing and pro day and everything, the drills are going to be big for him because if he can show that he's a good route runner, pass catcher, natural guy out of the backfield, his stock could rise a lot. Speaking of everybody here talking about the running back position, we're getting to the topic here. Who could be on the hot seat entering this season? Going to go through the offense first. Obviously, Bo Nix is the guy. He's definitely appears to be a franchise quarterback. Now, to what degree of quarterback is he going to be? That remains to be seen. We still got 3 years of cost control left, 4 if you include the rookie 5th-year option on that former first-round pick. So Denver's got ample time to figure out to what degree Bo Nix is a guy, but he is a guy. He's one of the top 20 quarterbacks in football, and I know that's not saying a lot. Is that an insult? I mean, he's definitely not top 10 yet, and he might never get top 10. We will see what happens. Growth is not linear. He could regress just as likely as it could grow next season. We just don't know. But the 1-year early return samples, there's reason to be optimistic. And you have, again, 4 more years of cost control. So that's big. Quarterback's fine. Backup quarterback, I think they'll bring back one of Wilson or Stidham. I think Denver would like Wilson back. With that said, I think there might be a market for Wilson out there and a chance for him to compete. There's not a lot of good quarterbacks in the draft. Outside of Sam Darnold, there's not a lot of options to sign out there either. I think a team might give Zach Allen a chance to start. Zach Wilson, excuse me, not Zach Allen. So I don't know if he'll be back. I think Stidham's more likely back, but backup quarterback, hopefully we won't see what happens, or we won't see anything there. Running back is a position that now onto running back. So Denver's losing Javonte Williams. I'd be pretty shocked if they brought him back. So then you have Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Beatty, Blake Watson, and Audric Estime. As far as I am concerned with the Broncos running back room, you have bodies there right now, but none of the guys are good enough and defined enough in their roles and complete enough players, checking enough boxes that you have to bring them all back and that they're all guaranteed for their spots next season. So that is one where, you just drafted Audric Estime. Well, they had him inactive versus the Bills. Former fifth round pick. That's not a heavy investment. I know he's young, but fumble controls didn't look overly dynamic out there either. Can he be an early down back? Maybe, but didn't see it. Jaleel McLaughlin, he looked okay in his role, but he can't pass protect at all. They don't really flex him out in pattern as a pass catcher. Watson, again, undrafted free agent all season. Typically with running backs, just for example, Bucky Irving this year for the Buccaneers, 4th or 5th round pick, obvious immediately. He's a guy. I would not bet on any of the Broncos' current running backs that they have ending up being a great running back, because typically you know out of the gate pretty darn quickly if they're going to be a all caps guy. And then you also have, I mentioned Tyler Beatty as well. Useful pieces. None of these guys, none of them should keep you from upgrading the room. And if anything, let's say you have a skill set let's say you draft Neal out of Kansas to compete with Estime. Okay, compete. Best guy wins. None of these guys were good enough this season in their role that they should be comfortable or guaranteed anything in the running back room. Denver's running back room was, in my opinion, the biggest weakness on the team, with how much they like to check down, with how much they like to run the screen game, with how good the offensive line was, with having a rookie quarterback who had some legs as well. Running back left so much meat on the bone this season. So they have to improve that room. It's not a very good free agency crop right now, but it's a good draft class. So we'll see where Denver goes. It could be as early as the first round. I think there's 3 first-round possibilities at running back for this team. Definitely, if they don't take one first round, I think they're going to take one day 2. Todd, we got Todd coming in here as well. Thank you, Todd, for getting the super chats rolling. You guys love me. I'm going solo right now, so I appreciate you showing the love. Nick's beer fund. This is Nick's diaper fund these days, not just for me. Although during the NFL draft, maybe we could have adult diapers with that content. God damn, that goes, excuse me, pardon my language, but that gets long. Nick's beer fund, Nick's coffee fund as well. We'll take a sip for that one. Oh, it's hot. Oh, first round targets, wide receiver, running back, tight end, edge, nose tackle, center. I'd love a bull rusher at edge or massive NT. All these are good. I don't think center is a first round option for the Broncos. We'll get to center in a bit, but offensive weapon or defensive front player. I'd also toss in linebacker and safety as well. If you are talking running back and tight end, I think you have to talk about linebacker and safety. But yeah, those are all options. Just get the best guy. I know that in an ideal world, if all things were equal, you'd get a superstar tight end or wide receiver, but that's just not how the draft works, right? Every class is different. Every player is different. So you just need to hit and find a impact player. And if that means that, like, would you rather have a good, like a top 15 tight end, or would you rather have an absolute superstar, continual annual all-pro linebacker? We need a tight end more, but I'd rather have the good player, right? So, and there's no guarantees, of course, but you got to trust your board. So all things on the table right now for the Broncos. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, keeping it in here. Todd says Nick's analysis. He got Bo wrong at first, but I think Nick is on board with Bo Nick's fixed now. I mean, Bo's your guy. Now, is he going to be, again, a quarterback capable of winning in arms race versus Burrow, Allen, Jackson, Mahomes? I don't know. That's also not really a fair ask. That's unbelievable quarterback play. So right now it's just building the best roster you can around him the next 3 to 4 seasons, and we'll go from there. Michael coming in. Good morning, Nick on Broncos for breakfast. Go Bo Broncos. Great to see you. Hope you're doing well. Always appreciate him coming in and hanging out. Don't burn your tongue now. Yeah, that was hot coffee. I should probably take the lid off here. I need the coffee. So baby woke up at 5 a.m. He's teething right now and got a cold, so he was pretty irritated. So I've been up for a couple hours now. But we're hanging out. We're having fun. Moving forward now. So the running back position, like I mentioned, they need bodies. They need 2 guys in there at least. I just don't think a single one of them on this roster is good enough that should keep you from adding talent. Rough, I don't care. Play better, compete. Moving forward, the wide receiver position. Wide receiver is weird for the Broncos because you've had 3 segments where guys can be moved in a row where Courtland Sutton has been discussed as potentially being moved. You've had 2 different off seasons and trade deadline as well. It didn't happen the last trade deadline, but Sutton only has 1 year left on his deal after this season. There was some he missed voluntary stuff early last season, and now he only has 1 year left. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was withheld himself again. So wide receiver is one that's in a lot of flux. You have Marvin Mims, who played great down the stretch to close the season out. Very useful piece. Is he a true wide receiver, though, or is he more of a gadget guy? So Denver definitely needs wide receiver, and I know that Denver has on the roster right now, you got Troy Franklin, you got Devon Vele as well. I don't know. I think Lil Jordan Humphrey is out, but you need a role like that. So wide receiver is the position that, I mean, outside of Marvin Mims, I wouldn't count on any of the guys being plus pieces entering next season. Now, Vele and Franklin, rookies, they are going to get a chance to compete, no doubt. You're talking about a 4th round pick who really struggled this season, that played 0 special team snaps, despite being a depth wide receiver, which is pretty unheard of. Then you have Vele, who, I mean, it's for a 7th round pick, but 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, useful piece. And I think he's obviously, you like having him here. My issue with Vele is that despite being big and being old for his position, he's 26 or 27 already. He not a good blocker. So Vele, if you're listening to this, I'm a fat sitting here on the chair, but eye in the sky don't lie. Got to be a better blocker next season if you're going to be getting a big time role, because there's just too many yards left on the field if your wide receivers aren't blocking well. And Vele, despite his size, pretty bad blocking. So keep an eye on that. But as far as, Mims and Sutton, after that, compete for the next guys. You have some useful depth pieces, but they're not the types that you're building an offense around so far, and should not have any sort of guaranteed role next season. So yeah, that's where I'm at wide receiver for the Broncos. Not in the worst spot, especially the Mims emerging. Sutton was a top 20 wide receivers this season, but the rest of them, they need to add some bodies, no doubt. David Youngkin, Nick, would you want a day 1 starter in the draft for Bo, or a player to develop? I want a day 1 starter, but at the end of the day, it's just about taking the best player, stacking your board based on the economics of the draft in the league. So you have multiple avenues to add talent. You have free agency. You have the rest of the draft as well. Like, let's say, and Denver ends up taking a defensive tackle in the 1st round, the best player on their board. He'll probably be rotational day 1. And then you have day 2 where you can take wide receiver, running back, linebacker. Those guys probably start. So it doesn't just have to be, we have to get this one position, one guy, round 1. That's, again, 95, 96 days out until the draft. It's just, that is not, I strongly believe that's not the way to operate as far as team building goes. So yeah, we definitely want playmakers, but you got to be a little bit more open and flexible, in my opinion. Moving on, now the tight ends. This room is, as far as I'm concerned, it's very similar to the wide receiver room, other than you have no entrenched guy like Sutton, and you have no up and coming guy that you're excited about in Mims. So really, this room, you could start from scratch this season. It's a lot like how the running back room is right now, honestly. I think Atkins is a very serviceable, useful, versatile piece. H-back, inline tight end. I thought his blocking improved this season. Troutman also is, I mean, I hate to use a discriminatory word, but he's kind of a jag, just a guy. But he knows the offense. Sean likes him. I think at least you have a floor with those two guys. As far as I'm concerned, Kroll, see ya. I mean, I don't know what his contract status is, but Kroll is a good example that just because you have size at 6'6", 260 does not make you a good blocker. So Kroll, you're looking to improve there and add a tight end, no doubt. None of those guys should feel safe. If you had next season, let's say the Rams released Tyler Higbee, and you pay Tyler Higbee to come in, I'd feel pretty good about Higbee, Troutman, and Kroll as room. Now, is it going to be an amazing room? No. Do the Bills have an amazing room? I mean, Knox is actually a pretty good blocker. I almost wish he was a free agent. They used a first-round pick on Kincaid. He had like 2 targets, 1 catch for 6 yards. Good use of a first-round pick there. Bills, I guess, can't complain too much. They got this far, but I would not say on the strength of a first-round pick at tight end. I mean, who else out there? You have the Commanders resuscitating the body of Zach Ertz, who is serviceable at this point, but off the scrap heap at this point in his career as well. So, again, I think they just need to raise the floor of that room and make some sort of investment, but it doesn't have to be premium at the end of the day. But they need somebody out there. Offensive line's a weird one. The dark horse here for the Broncos offensive line is a swing interior player. Right now, the Broncos don't have a lot of guys that I trust, and really they probably need to look for a developmental center piece. So somebody who can play guard as well, but a developmental center. Ben Powers, a free agent after 2025, I believe. So you have a opening coming up. Maybe it's 2 more years. But Ben Powers, he signed a 4-year contract. So there's 2 more years, but it's easy to move on from after 2025. Not saying they should or would, but flexibility there. And then Luke Wattenberg is a free agent after this season. So Broncos, the dark horse need on this team, obviously you can never have enough good offensive line. I mean, what we've seen from the Bills and the Eagles and even the Lions before their defense, was on the newest season of MASH. The offensive line is important. I think a developmental interior guy who's a guard and a center is a dark horse need for this team, for just the health of the roster. Alex Forsythe has 2 years left on his contract. He was a little hit or miss this season. And Luke Wattenberg has struggled in the run game, but been okay in the pass game. You're happy to have Wattenberg because he's cheap, right? You can't have 5 highly paid guys on the offensive line. You probably shouldn't. So it's good to have a cheap option there. You are looking for competition and somebody to take the reins for him after 2025, though. So I think that's probably the move for the interior. So on the defensive side, edge is a weird position for the Broncos because you can never have enough good edge rushers, and it's a position that if the board has talent available that you like, you should swing, no matter what your room looks like, because of the churn of that position and how much depth matters. That said, Denver is pretty good at edge rusher on paper entry next season. Now, I don't think they have any superstars. Sorry, I know Nick Bonito had a good season. I think he's a very good player. I don't think he's a superstar player. I think scheme and Allen helped him, and Surtain goes into the scheme, helped him a lot this season. Very useful piece. Cooper, I thought he was not as good after signing that contract. He's, again, another useful guy. Ellis, though, one of the youngest players in the NFL this season, up and coming. And I was really impressed with Tillman down the stretch. Now, he's not overly explosive, but he's a different body type than any of those other guys. So I thought Tillman was pretty good this season. So edge is one. It's probably a punt on it this season position, which is okay. You have 4 guys. Again, if there's one you like, you shouldn't shy away. But it's probably a position that you punt on. Interior defensive line is probably the biggest dark horse on this team, unless you've been following me on Twitter. You're set to lose. So you have 4 good. You had 4 good interior guys. You have the number 1 defense in, I think, run EPA per play against the run. DJ Jones said to hit free agency. Malcolm Roach, a sub 300-pound nose tackle, sitting there like 6'2", 295. Very good player, but not a two-gapper by any means. Not that you have to have a two-gap, but it'd be nice to have a little bit more mass and length. Zach Allen had an all-pro caliber season, but he played like 100 more snaps than any other interior defensive line. I don't think that's tenable. I don't think you can do that again next season. I think you have to find more rotation and more breathers for Zach Allen out there. So there's a question there. And John Franklin Myers is set to be a free agent after this season. So DJ Jones out the door right now. It sounds like he's looking for a bigger contract that Denver would be willing to offer. And then you have small guys left, smaller than normal interior defensive linemen, and Allen, Roach, and John Franklin Myers, who are all on the last year of their contract. Interior defensive line is a need. And interior defensive line is also a position that I think about it like kind of building a fire. I think you guys heard me use the analogy before, but if you guys are Boy Scouts or campers or anything like that, with the interior defensive line and offensive line, you never want to let it get cold. So like sometimes you have a fire at a campsite for a while, and let's say people are there, but you're watching it, because we practice fire safety here, but you're not stoking it and adding logs to the fire and whatnot. Then all of a sudden, it's completely out. There's no more heat coming from it. Well, then you have to start all over from beginning and how much work it takes to get the fire started. If you do that in the offensive and defensive line, you're screwed. It's going to be, let's say Denver they don't address the defensive line at all this season, and you lose 2 of the next 3 guys, and then Allen, because of how many snaps he's playing, gets injured. You're starting from square one. It's going to be 1 or 2 seasons just building the fire back up before it's roaring again. So I don't know. I'm very much a toss a log on the fire for the trenches perspective, and Denver needs to toss a log on that fire this season. Also, I don't think it's a smart idea. Let's say, we can just bring back all of John Franklin Myers, Zach Allen, and Malcolm Roach. Those are going to be three third contract players. You do not want a room that's just purely third contract players in the NFL. It's not good business. So you definitely need to address the interior defensive line. Linebacker, I think Singleton will be back. I do think Singleton will be back. I don't think it should be a foregone conclusion, but it seems that way from what I've heard. But you have one there. You need another body. Denver wasn't happy with the linebacker room at any point this season. Credit to, I heard Zach Stevens either tweet or mention, talking to him, that Denver was this close to benching Cody Barton, and then he had that good game against New Orleans, and that bought him life for the rest of the season. But they were not happy with Cody Barton. They were not happy with Stranad. They were really trying to go to Penny to get him off the field in any chance possible. They brought in Welch. They brought in Cunningham. They brought in Alexander. They were not happy with linebacker this season. Linebacker was terrible. Tight end gets more of the ire of the fans and running back, because I think not totally our fault, but we got a little bit of a fantasy football pilled brain, and also anything that we can do to help Bo Nix fans want to do that. But linebacker was freaking terrible this season for Denver, and they need to add at least one more body. Luckily, it's a deep drafted linebacker. There's going to be some quality starters that come out of this draft. Linebacker is one of the worst scouted positions in the NFL draft. Like, teams aren't very good at separating the haves from the have-nots coming out of the draft. So it's really going to be a matter of which guy ends up hitting and being good. But there's going to be some quality linebackers to be had round 3 through 5, starting caliber, in my opinion. So keep an eye on linebacker, of course. So that's the running back, tight end, linebacker, the most obvious positions the Broncos have to address at some form or fashion this offseason. After that, the defensive backfield is interesting because Denver has options. They're the most obvious spot that they need to add competition and talent is PJ Locke. PJ Locke was not very good this season. I know there's some people who like him. He's worked really hard to get to this spot, but he was pretty bad on the whole this season. He's better as a depth player than a starter. Useful piece, but you want to add some competition there. I don't think necessarily you want to spend a big contract on a guy, but given how safeties are not getting paid right now, maybe you can sign a guy for relative pennies on the dollar because safeties are just not valued right now. With so much quarter shells or light boxes, the jobs for the safeties, even though they have to do a lot of different things, you're not putting as much stress on them in single high coverages for a lot of teams. And Denver's more primarily cover 1, cover 3, kind of can fudge the math though when you got a guy like PS2. So PJ Locke's the dark horse here. Not the dark horse, the most obvious piece. Dark horse guy who could be upgraded upon, and shout out to Cody Alexander, who's written, I think, 4 or 5 books on defensive schemes, coaches, college ball at this point. He's been on the show before to interview. If you follow Cody Alexander on football, he does a lot of good football stuff, but he listed the Broncos' biggest need this season as slot cornerback. McMillan is a lot like Wattenberg to me, where you have a guy who's fine for the rookie contract, who obviously is a serviceable piece, not a very dynamic player. Not a lot of length, not a lot of athleticism, smart player, good tackler for what he is, but just kind of a guy right now that's filling a spot on a cheap contract, in my opinion. That said, there's value to that. He's an exclusive rights free agent, I believe, so you still have 2 more years of control. You'll exercise that exclusive rights, no doubt. So you have 2 more years of him. You have 2 more years of Riley Moss as well. I think probably you're looking to add depth to the position. We'll see what happens with Mathis. I've heard he might move to safety. Chris Abrams-Drain. I think you're looking for depth for the position, but safety for PJ Locke is the most obvious plug-and-play spot. For me, though, I think probably, unless you're upgrading Locke, it's running it back with the same starting 5 next season. But especially the cornerbacks there, Jaquan McMillan and Riley Moss, they're still on a trial run. We saw positive for Moss this season before the injury, kind of fell off after the injury. McMillan has been a good piece here and there, but has limitations. What I like about all those guys is that I think there's some positional versatility. I think McMillan could end up being a safety if you needed to. I think in preseason we saw some McMillan safety snaps as well. He's pretty good at coming down and playing that alley as far as a run defender. So maybe he could be a safety option. And Riley Moss, he was good at boundary cornerback, but I think he could also be a slot defender or a safety in the league as well. So right now, my plan would be to add depth to the position, because you can never have enough good cornerbacks, especially guys who can play man and tackle. If you can't tackle, then I'm not going to prioritize you in the first 4 rounds. Duh. But I think probably running it back next season with the cornerback room, but keeping an eye on the roles of Jaquan McMillan and Riley Moss, who have some versatility. And they could be options elsewhere on the team. So we'll see what happens. We got Mark Schrader coming in here saying, "Good morning, Nick. Great to see you." I see Jason Bonney coming in saying, "Sneaky good slot receiver is Jack Beck." Beck is way bigger than Edelman. Beck is like 6'2", 220, 215. He is, and I think he's going to end up going day 2. Really sadly for Beck, his brother was slain in that New Orleans terrorist attack. So that's if you hadn't heard that yet. But Beck, former player at LSU, wide receiver, transferred to TCU. Him and Savion Williams are interesting pieces, but I really like Beck. I think a lot of people, not for some reason, he had a lot of stats, but Harold Faden Jr. is getting a lot of love. I don't really see it with him as far as the athlete in space and blocker goes. I'd much rather have Jack Beck in that big slot role than Harold Faden Jr., who I think Beck offers a lot more twitch and explosiveness and route running compared to Faden. But we got a long way to go yet. So appreciate everyone coming in, hanging out here today. Shout out to Mark Schrader again, says, "Good morning, Nick." Good morning to you, Mark. Yeah, Joey says, coming in, says, "Beck 6'2", 215. That's a big boy. That's a healthy lad. Pretty good. I like Beck a lot. I think he's going to go day 2. Denver and wide receiver is very much on the table for Denver. I mean, I know everybody really wants Genty or Boren, but if your best player on your board when you're going is a wide receiver, an interior defensive lineman, you have to consider it. You just have to. Those are harder positions to fill with quality players comparative to the dollar. So, again, 95 days out, we have to have a lot of flexibility and options at this point. We're going to talk about all of it. We got plenty of time to do so. So, gosh, what is the website that has the mock draft database? I think that's what it is. Yeah, here we go. So right now, the Broncos, let's see if we can find that big board mock something. Well, here we go. Right now, the Broncos most drafted player of the Broncos at 20.1% of the drafts, or 20.8% of the drafts, is Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan. Next up is Tyler Warren at 16.3. Then you got Luther Burden, tied also at 16.3. Interesting. So people looking for weapons for Denver. It makes sense. And Jess Canady says DJ Jones can be replaced in the 4th round, so you can go first 3 offense. I don't know if Jones can be replaced in the 4th round because defensive line is somewhat of a developmental position, especially that late. So more likely you're talking about somebody competing with Wazirike and Jackson if you're using a 4th round pick. I think Denver will be able to find a usable interior defensive lineman in free agency in the cost control realm. Maybe I don't know what Poona Ford gets, but he's somebody out there. Bobby Brown the third, I think, from Rams, another option as well. There'll be some options. Doesn't mean they should not also draft a guy though. It's just super important. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Joey says, don't think Burden makes a ton of sense for us. I mean, he's an explosive playmaker, built pretty well. Not a good route runner right now. I really don't like how he blocks, but somebody you got to keep an eye on, no doubt. So appreciate everyone coming in, hanging out today as I ran solo. We went through the roster and kind of some guys that I think are questionable entering next season. I mean, the theme, it's the stuff that's obvious, right? Running back room, it's essentially starting from scratch. You have bodies there, right? Which I don't want to sound inhumane, but like McLaughlin, Estime, Watson, they haven't done enough that they should factor into other than you have depth guys who can compete. You shouldn't feel good about that. Tight end room, same thing. You have Troutman and Atkins, serviceable depth guys, but if you can add competition or better players there, none of those guys are going to stop you from adding talent. They shouldn't. Wide receiver depth is really a dark horse. That's a position that's a year away from disaster. So you got to think about wide receiver as well. Similarly to interior defensive line, definitely a year away from disaster. Obvious need at linebacker and defensive back, kind of a dark horse, right? It's there's somebody you love there. You have some flexibility to shake up the room. So we'll see what happens. We got plenty of time to talk draft the rest of the way, guys. We'll see what happens. A lot of fun. And tonight I'm picking, I think Ohio State is going to end up winning 34-16. I think it's not going to be close. I think Ohio State's got too much talent. So appreciate you guys. Hope you have a good one. Make sure you're following myself on Twitter at NickKendellMHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, we're over at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share. Shout out to our star givers today, Todd Ostendorf, David Youngkin. Thank you so much, Mark Schrader. I know we got Michael Ronquillo in here as well. Yeah, thank you guys. I hope you have a great rest of the week. I see Caleb coming in and say, how do you feel about Jaden Blue from Texas or Henderson from OSU? Talked about OSU Henderson earlier. It's going to come down to his injuries, but I think he's a round 2 caliber back. He's not just track speed. You can see on the field as well. Blue's an interesting guy, but he's day 3. He's one who I think was a pretty good pass catcher this season, but I don't think he is special by any means. But you could always, this is a deep class. I wouldn't, honestly, I think Denver, if they have a chance, should take 2 running backs out of this class. What about McLaughlin? What about Estime? What about Watson? Compete. Go earn your spot or hit the bricks, man. I'm sorry. It's good stories, good people, whatever. Yeah, it's just business about winning football games at the end of the day, and they'll be fine. There'll be other teams that are looking for them, but Denver needs to address that room and add talent. So don't like it, improve and play better and make a case for yourself. Appreciate everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Shout out to the Star Givers again. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Again, happy Martin Luther King Day. Important to shout that out and, read a little bit about that. Pretty incredible stuff. And appreciate you guys. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.